The formal meeting of the Board of Education for October 5th, 2015 is called to order. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. Any item that will be voted on this evening has been posted as required by state law. This meeting is being televised live and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. In light of last week's tragedy in Roseburg, there is a collective feeling among the board to do something, acknowledge it publicly. Mike Rosen offered to write up a resolution. I'd like Mike to introduce the item.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks to board members for taking time to look at it. And then also, I had the opportunity to talk to Representative Alyssa Kenny-Geyer, who's been a strong advocate on gun control in the legislature, and she helped too. I would just say that there are a few things that we want to accomplish with this resolution. And it's important to note that all levels of government and the state, the school district, our legislature, and our governor all have opportunities to take action that we believe could advance greater safety for our school children and our citizens through gun control. And we just start out the resolution saying, and this will be short, it is with great sadness that we remember the incidents of last Thursday where one teacher and 8 students died and 9 were wounded when a gunman opened fire in a classroom at Umpqua Community College. As a school board, a district, and a community of students, teachers, and parents, our hearts and condolences go out to the people of Roseburg. We can't begin to understand the heartache they are experiencing, and so we send uplifting thoughts and prayers in the hope that as time passes, their hearts and community will begin to heal. The problem of unchecked gun violence in our nation is so pervasive and relentless that we can only expect a similar tragic event soon after the press leaves Roseburg. As Nicholas Kristof, one of Oregon's own, said recently, quote, "We've mourned too often, seen too many schools and colleges devastated by shootings, watched too many students get an education in grief. It's time for a new approach to gun violence. We're angry, but we also need to be smart." Thank you.
Board will now consider resolution number 5152. Do I have a motion for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Director Anthony moves and Director Knowles seconds the motion to adopt resolution 512. Ms. Powell, you're not Ms. Houston. Is there any public comment on resolution 5152?
There is not.
Okay. Is there board discussion on this resolution?
Are we reading the whole resolution, the bottom part? Is this
We can if you want to, part of your discussion.
make it like that we gave?
Why don't you start?
I mean, the resolution part.
Sure.
Be it resolved
Be
that.
it resolved that.
Portland Public Schools will seek to confirm, I gotta put on my glasses, sorry. Concerned to optimize the role in the provision of services that educate children about gun safety and seek to keep firearms out of the hands of children. Continue to prevent the presence of guns on school property. Provide and promote early access to mental health care services for students of all ages. Continue to restore in-school counseling positions. 2, Portland Public Schools requests that the Oregon Legislature swiftly enact the law to require all Oregonians to obtain a permit to purchase a handgun, and that all owners of handguns already in circulation be required to obtain a permit. Significantly restrict the ability of citizens to obtain a concealed carry permit, prohibit individuals from obtaining an open carry permit, establish a 14-day waiting period for the legal purchase of all firearms, prohibit the sale of all semi-automatic weapons, the resale of semi-automatic weapons already in circulation, and the sale of kits to convert weapons to semi-automatic or full automatic use. PPS requests the Governor of Oregon to launch a significant statewide campaign across all agencies to reduce gun violence in our communities and investigate ways to provide enhanced community-based mental health care.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Any other comments? Okay, the board will now vote on 5152. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, indicate by saying no. No abstentions. The resolution 5152 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Davidson voting
Yes.
yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike, for your work on that. Thanks. Public comment. Ms. Powell, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
We do. I should say our students have arrived, if you want to start.
Oh,
Yes.
let's do the student testimony first then.
We have Karn Satang and Amy Lee.
Welcome, and if you could just state your name for the record. When you begin to speak, the green light will go on, and then there'll be a yellow light and a red light, in which time your time is up. So you've got 3 minutes.
Paul.
Hello, members of the Board of Education. My name is Karn Tang. I'm with the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. For folks who I've met already, it was nice meeting you. For folks who I got in touch with, I look forward to building with y'all. We're basically here to talk about a campaign that our youth group, API Leaders for Liberation of Youth, have started. And I wanted to throw it to them before I do. I think for a lot of folks right now, a lot of young people aren't engaged in the classroom for a lot of different reasons. Part of the work we're trying to do is find out reasons and work to address these reasons why folks aren't engaged in the classroom. I think we feel like, and our youth identified, for a lot of young people, if we don't learn about people who look like us, or we don't see ourselves reflected in the textbooks, it's really hard to stay engaged and want to come to class. We also want to recognize and give a shout out to the folks working with the Dignity in Schools campaign behind us with all the hard work they're doing. And we also know these issues with ethnic studies, with discipline in schools is connected, and we want to work together to figure out ways we can support our students as best as possible. So I want to stop talking and then give some time for our young folks to talk about the campaign that they're working on right now. Now I'm gonna stop talking.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm a sophomore at Franklin High School.
Could you
So-
state your last name for the record?
Oh, Lee. I want to talk about ethnic studies. So right now, U.S. history is Eurocentric, and there is more to U.S. history than the contributions of European Americans, and we wanted to include all the contributions that other people of color have done in the U.S.
My name is Cheryl Leung, L-U-O-N-G, and I am a freshman in college, PCC. So the reason why I personally want to have ethnic studies implemented in PBS high schools is personally because I feel like I would be more invested in my education and interested in learning what is offered for me. And personally, I barely graduated high school. I was not motivated, and I feel like if I had a cultural studies class, an ethnic studies class that would be relevant to me, I would be more invested and want to learn more and probably have higher achievement rates in my other classes as well. A lot of my other peers feel that way too, so I hope you guys can understand.
I'm Ronald Menguino, and I am a senior in high school. And our campaign is missing pages of our history, and it's an ethnic studies campaign. And the date that we are about to launch this event is October 15th from 5 to 7. And we are hoping that you will help assist us in this event and hope that you will talk for the event.
Steve has already accepted to speak at the event, and I'm really excited to hear from him, and I hope you guys can come too. And I understand Mike is busy, but he's promised he would bring staff to check out, like to see who Ally is, what we want, what we're about, see the community members, and just really have fun, because it's kind of like a party. We'll have performances too, and really get to know everybody. Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to clarify, there were three things that we had talked about that you were asking for. One was more history about people of color in our history classes, filling in. One was ethnic studies as an elective in each high school. And the third was a website that allows our teachers to easily go and find this information.
Yes.
Is that correct
Yeah.
clarification?
Yes. You
Wonderful.
said you were
Thank
already
you.
working on that too, so I'm really excited about the website thing too. Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming. It's great. I hope we can do all those things. I certainly am going to support.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you to Steve, and I had the opportunity to meet with these students and the rest of the Ally group on Friday, and I passed around some of the material that they gave us. They're incredibly organized, dedicated, they know what they're talking about, and I'm looking forward to working with them. And I did promise them that even though I would be out of town and not able to attend the event, I would send my staff, which I don't have any of, but that they would be there to represent me. But I'm going to find someone. It might be my wife, but someone will be there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, are there other students?
No.
No.
We
Okay.
have some students we'd like to speak. We have some students that we would like to speak.
Spots.
Mr. Terry, you turn this down. You have the option to allow somebody from this group to speak.
We do have, I know, I realize that, and I'd like to,
I want you to act right now.
I'd like to extend a student to come up and speak to us.
Sure.
We'd like 2 students.
Stand up too.
You're a hard negotiator, but
Can a
let's
parent
bring on
go
2.
up? Can a parent go up also?
No, we've got 2
We would like for a
students.
parent to go up. We would like for a parent to show up. We're not
This is
trying to
student
disrupt it.
testimony, ma'am.
But
We
if
got room on
have
now.
to be disruptive, we will, because you need to hear the voice.
Can we start with our students?
We have room here on
Come on, I'll come with
Yeah.
you.
on this other one, right here.
If they need to hear the voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
These are the black boys that you talk about in your data. That this stuff is still happening to.
Excuse me, my name is Tyresha Garrett. I know that you asked for a parent not to speak, but my sons are young, so it takes time in communication, and it's a developmental process. But what I would like to share, as the other students shared as well, is what happens when you do not share, when it comes to ethnicity and sharing the cultural piece on behalf of African Americans, and what that does to the psyche, and how it is detrimental in regards to the Euro-centric piece that are also in the history books. We've had issues to where, and this is very personal, but a student that has had suicidal ideation at the schools because of the staff and teachers have been making racial comments and whatnot, and an issue to where a student tried to hang themselves from a tetherball pole. That student is here tonight, and it's been very traumatizing. And so we're just here to support whatever can be done on behalf of changing anything in PPS school systems to help benefit the African Americans. Anything you want to say, son?
I have a question. My name is Emmanuel Gibson, and why do we not learn about our history? Can you answer that? Can you answer it?
It's a good question, and one that if you're not learning about your history now, we need to do something about. So I appreciate you
And
being
this
here.
new board is moving in that direction. I tried to get the old board to go forward with that, and they wouldn't. The new board is going forward, hopefully, with that, and hopefully, before this year is out, we will have some pretty good, solid history surrounding African Americans as well as other people of color.
I feel that it is to hold up the power structure of the white domination. That's what I feel that it is. And in order for that to remain, that's why we're not being taught about our history. Because we are a powerful people, and we have contributed on so many great levels, being the original people. That is how I feel about it, and that needed to be said.
Thank you.
Anything you want to say?
We're not in disagreement, certainly.
No? Okay. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
New day dawning.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, is there a further public comment?
Yes,
Fowl?
we do. We have Danielle Simonelli and Gigi Cooper.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Danielle Simonelli, spelled Simonelli, and I have children who attend Portland Public Schools. I'm here tonight to express parent concern with the forthcoming proposals to redraw school district boundaries as a means of addressing overcrowding and enhancing achievement. Redrawing the boundaries is a very disruptive solution to this problem to not only families and children, but also the communities where they reside. There is no data that we are aware of that demonstrates a narrowing of the achievement gap and an improvement in graduation rates by simply altering district boundaries. In addition, the PPS audit in 2013 regarding graduation rate improvement makes no mention of boundary reassignment, school enrollment, or even equal course offerings. Enrollment forecasts, as well as the accuracy of those forecasts, are strong determiners of where school boundaries lie. And we would like to understand if changing demographics were taken into account. If PPS forecasts are indeed accurate year after year, then why are we in a constant state of overcrowding, and how can we be sure we won't be doing this again in the future? We would especially like to challenge both the board and the DBRAC committee in the use of the word equity. Despite reviewing available documentation and online and inquiring during town halls, we still don't have a satisfactory definition of equity as applied to redrawing district boundaries. There is a difference between equity of opportunity and equity of outcomes, and everyone seems to approve of a world in which opportunity is equal even if outcomes are not. PPS needs to differentiate between these and explain the metrics with which they are measured, what key performance indicators will drive decisions, and communicate results and data to parents and educators. Speaking of KPIs, we notice that they are being discussed tonight in the agenda, and there are two of particular importance which were not prioritized by DBRAC as critical. The first is promote safer routes to schools by limiting the number of natural and human-made physical boundaries students must cross, etc. We believe that the safety of our children should be the first priority of PPS. Furthermore, we believe that the availability of public transportation options should be included alongside sidewalks and bicycle lanes when considering alternatives. The second deprioritized KPI states, promote a sense of community by keeping neighborhoods together as much as possible. Given extensive literature around the predictive nature of an active community and parent involvement in students being successful learners, it's unclear to me why this would not be prioritized, particularly given the superintendent's primary goals around reading, graduation, and reduction of expulsions. It seems that enhancing and supporting community and parent involvement is a critical evidence-based strategy that should not be ignored when considering the boundaries. We appreciate the board's serious review of the points I've highlighted tonight, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Tim Schultz and Dominic Lefebvre.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Tim Schultz, and I'm the founder of PDX Summer School program and also created the Jade Journal in collaboration with Know Your City. I want to share with you my experience as a Harrison Park 5th grade teacher and the impact that state testing has had on my classroom. I want you to know that I shared my views with our principal, and we had a discussion. I acknowledge that while the limitations and focus for our students not at a benchmark are well intended, my purpose here is to talk to you about how the impact on my students. Because my school's Smarter Balance scores were low, I have been directed that I cannot use novels to teach reading for the first 6 weeks of school. This is a intended attempt to improve the reading of students at Harrison Park. Yet as a result, my students will not be exposed to such quality authors as Roald Dahl, Beverly Cleary, and countless others because of their test results. Instead, we are required to use the Scott Forsman curriculum. As a teacher, it seems counterintuitive that the way to improve students' reading and writing score is to restrict their reading options. The state results have far-reaching effects which are not limited to the classroom, but also restricts what enhancements we offer to certain students. At Harrison Park, ESL students do not get to experience PE, art, music, and technology. Instead, they are in ESL classes while the rest of the students go to those specials. This is also a well-intended attempt to improve student performance on state tests. Teachers at my school are being discouraged from taking field trips, again an attempt to maximize instruction time for the reading and math skills. The past 5 years, I've been able to take my students to Starbase, a science-based camp that teaches STEM curriculum that is directly aligned to Common Core, but this year that was not allowed. In fact, at Harrison Park, the schedule only allowed time to teach reading, math, and writing. I then wrote a letter that I shared with several of you board members that explained the scheduling issue at Harrison Park, along with my other concerns. I do not know what happened behind the scene, but 2 days after I shared the letter, my principal sent out an email explaining that they would change the schedule to allow teachers to teach science, social studies, and geography because, quote, someone had complained to the school board. For my first 4 years of teaching 5th grade at Harrison Park, I had my students take bike safety with the Bike Transportation Alliance. Starting 2 years ago, my principal cut that program because it took away too much instructional time. Bike safety, crucial in the urban areas my students ride in, was stripped from them. Sadly, these types of changes, from limiting field trips to cutting programs, are not limited to Harrison Park. William Francis, the director of the Bike Transportation Alliance, has found that overall standardized testing and school status have really influenced cancellations of bike safety since I started my position in August of 2014. Low test scores follow poor schools. This means that huge numbers of our poor youth are not offered the opportunity to learn valuable skills to ride bikes safely, yet their wealthier counterparts are. This raises important equity issues that I think the board should be concerned about. To me, as a teacher in a high-poverty school, it is just plain wrong. And this is not just an impact being felt at Harrison Park. Many other low-performing PPS schools are adopting similar methods to improve student test results. Since state tests determine whether a school is failing or not, districts have put an incredible emphasis and pressure on administrators to get results. This pressure and stress moves from teachers down to their students. And the inevitable logical conclusion is sadly easily reached, that if this is happening at Harrison Park, it surely is happening at other schools in similar situations. In sharing this with you and identifying the inequity taking place in my school, I also speak for numerous teachers who are reluctant to speak out as they don't want to draw the attention of their building principals or district administrators. I sincerely hope you as board members reach out to teachers and hear their stories in a setting where they feel safe to share. I share this information with you openly and honestly in hopes that you take action on them. It is truly up to you to make sure that we actively fight against these inequities when we have the opportunity to do so. The choice I see is this: do we want a district that teaches the whole child and engages them in meaningful learning experiences that help them grow to be successful and contributing members to their community? Or do we want a district that teaches students to pass the state reading and math tests? My experience in the classroom leads me to believe that we are already moving towards the latter. My hope is that we can see ourselves working toward the former. Thank you so much for hearing me tonight.
Go ahead.
Okay. Tim, does what age are your kids?
I teach 5th grade.
5th? Yeah. So you have a fairly large number, clarifying here, you have a fairly large number of kids who are at grade level or above in reading? Do you have none, or do you have some?
I have some.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to use novels with those some who are even at the grade level?
For the first 6 weeks of school, no.
Okay.
So I had other questions. I had a question.
If you have a quick
I was a school
clarifying
board
question.
member,
So one of the things that you said, Tim, that's of concern, as it sounds like there's this choice between in terms of accelerating achievement, it's a choice between accelerating achievement through more intense teaching in core subjects versus subjects that could be considered more elective, which tend to be motivational in terms of kids' interests like art, or you talked about social studies and such. And so just from a logic standpoint, I understand that the approach might be to focus heavily on those core subjects. So I'm wondering what you see as the balance. If these kids need more time, then what's the alternative?
The alternative is to teach those other subjects and integrate them with reading and math. I mean, because I was able to teach science, my kids right now are doing a science experiment where they are growing different plants using the scientific method. They are making journal entries and writing them down, practicing those skills. I check it. They are also going to be recording, getting data on them, and then they will be making that into graphs and doing further math work. So it is, those other subjects are reading and writing and math. I mean, they are absolutely integrated, but they are not directly teaching kids the skills that they need to pass the state test. That is true. But that's wherein lies the argument, I believe, is what kind of what kind of students are we trying to, what kind of education are we trying to provide the kids?
Yeah, and so then I appreciate that, and then I just wanted to say in closing that I appreciate you bringing this issue forward, and I think it's unfortunate that the way the principal communicated in your school, that somebody was singled out as if it was a complaint versus constructive feedback.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. And Tim, thank you for your work at PDX Summer School. as
Yeah,
well.
it's
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
My name is Dominic Lefave, Lefave. I'm a special education teacher at Wilson High School. And the issue that I want to bring to you today is just horrific overcrowding in our focus programs in special education. And I have been alerting people about the situation for a while. It's become just unbelievably acute this year. And I'm kind of, I'm a little surprised because, the word from the board last year was that you were addressing the situation. You have not addressed it at all, I can tell you. I teach a life skills program, which is one kind of focus program, and I have 18 kids in that program. It's an unprecedented amount. I know that to get as a high school teacher to get up here in front of the board and complain about 18 kids sounds ridiculous, because most of my colleagues in general education, have 180 or something. But 18 kids in my program with 3 paraeducators is a sham. It's a shell. It looks to the public like we have the program, but in actual fact, the kids are not getting the services that they need. And in fact, it endangers students. We've already had several incidents this year, and we're not very far into the year, where students were seriously endangered. I'm talking about physical risk. And I know that my colleague who runs another focus program at Wilson and has the same amount of, same numbers in his program. I shouldn't speak for him, but I would guess that his, looking at his program, his goal for the year is for someone not to get hurt, for someone not to die in his program. And I'm not exaggerating. So, and that's not an educational goal. I've been held up as an exemplary life skills teacher. My program has been studied to be promoted around the district as an exemplary program, a model. This year, it's been decimated. It's been trashed by special ed administration who don't care about the numbers, who don't care about my communications about staffing levels. And you know, I don't know what else to do except tell you guys. So I'm telling you. Other issues across special ed are really similar. It's a simple problem. It needs to be addressed. Our behavioral support program was rebranded a learning center, which of course doubled the caseload in that. We call it. I've heard it called a behavior support center. I've heard it called a learning center with behavior supports. I've heard it called lots of different things in lots of different contexts. The net result, though, was the caseload was doubled and the staffing was reduced. This is across the district. I know from talking to my colleagues, this is not just Wilson High School. In fact, I think Wilson may have it a little better. I've heard of life skills programs up in the mid-20s in terms of enrollment. It's outrageous. It's unprecedented. Staffing has not been increased in terms of paraeducation support, and it's horrific. And our students are, in the end, we've created this situation where on paper we pretend we have special education services, but in fact the good teachers that are trying to serve their students are completely unable to do it. And so it's a sham. It's a paper facade over our program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to us. Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any more public comments?
No.
Okay. Okay, we now will talk about the enrollment balance and values framework. The board discussed this item at its September 16th meeting. Superintendent Smith, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just that the district-wide boundary review committee did a big presentation to the board back in July. There was a discussion, and I brought back a summary at the September 16th meeting, and after that discussion, told you I would bring back a resolution this evening. The resolution that's included in your packet, number 5149, does three things. The Board of Education endorses the recommended values and policy framework for district-wide enrollment balancing, and the key thing, one of the key things we did last time was, instead of just talking about boundaries, we talked about a framework for enrollment balancing because it acknowledges multiple levers for having schools that can offer a full program. So it is a policy framework for district-wide enrollment balancing. 2, the board acknowledges and appreciates the work that the District-Wide Boundary Advisory Committee has undertaken for developing the district-wide boundary review values and policy framework. And 3, the board directs the superintendent to brief board members by the November 2015 meeting on the development of enrollment balancing scenarios. So we're really asking DBREC to go forth and build with the staff to build scenarios that are aligned with the values and policy framework. So those are the 3 things your resolution does. And it is now before you for a vote.
Okay, the board will now consider Resolution 5149, Values and Policy Framework for District-Wide Enrollment Balancing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Director Knowles moves and Director Sparza Brown seconds the motion to adopt Resolution 5149. Powell, are there any public comment on 5149?
I'm sorry.
Is there any public comment?
Yes, there is. Tony Drogi and I'm sorry, and Brian Owendoff.
Hello, my name is Tony Droege, D-R-O-E-G-E. I'm a parent of 2 children in Portland Public Schools, and I'd like to start with a question. Have any studies been done on how these boundary changes will affect gentrification? And if not, why hasn't that been considered? The next thing I'd like to talk about is what I witnessed at the DBRAC District-Wide Balancing Committee meeting on September the 17th. Well into the meeting, an item not on the agenda was presented to the committee. The 20 enrollment balancing factors that had been worked on for quite some time were presented to the committee, with 9 factors chosen as KPIs, key performance indicators. This was not on the agenda. The committee had never seen these 9, as far as I could tell as a citizen, they had never seen these 9 items chosen to the exclusion of the other 11. I'd like to read from a transcript of the meeting. At 1 hour and 50 minutes and 2 seconds, the moderator of the meeting says, "Let's let them," meaning the committee, "read it." 1 minute and 40 seconds later, "So just another minute." 30 seconds later, the PPS staff begins speaking, instructing this committee on the details of how to vote, of what the implications are. They speak for some time. Then they say, "So what do you think?" Committee member Scott Baylor said, "I feel hugely rushed, and this, the KPIs, is really important. We've got to have more time for this." PPS staff, "So Scott, we're happy to hear your suggestions, but we don't have meeting time for it. But that doesn't mean you don't have opportunities as individuals to give input." Scott, "I'm saying this really sucks as a way to run this meeting. This is really important. We don't have time to discuss it. That's not okay with me." PPS staff, "But could you give your input? Then we could come back with the input you've given and look at it." Scott Bailey, "I want time to discuss this with people, to think it through and discuss with this people. It's not a matter of my individual opinion. We're here as a committee for a reason, and that's so I can learn from other people." PPS staff moves for a vote.
Did they vote then?
The majority of the committee sided with Scott Bailey. PPS staff says, "So we will look to build some agenda time for this group at a future meeting." So it's 7 till, and we still have a critical agenda item to come. The next meeting on September the 1st was canceled. Now, the administration is ready to put forward the proposed boundaries. So what was important enough that they had to cut off discussion? A presentation of a high production value PR video designed to convince the public of the transparency of this process. I'd also like to ask, in this entire process, why there wasn't a linear progression in full view of the public, with public input, comment, and oversight at every step, moving sequentially from issues faced to values, the values you're about to vote on tonight, to enrollment balancing factors, to the enrollment balancing factors that would be chosen as key performance indicators, to propose possible scenarios. If that had happened, I believe most of us would have accepted your authority to make these difficult decisions, regardless of the impact on our own personal concerns.
Sir, can you...
As things stand now, and I quote DBEC member Scott Bailey, "It is not okay with us."
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you start, I just want to make sure, Ms. Powell, that we're getting the lights going.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead.
Great. My name is Brian Owendoff. I have 3 children in Portland Public Schools, a 10th grader, an 8th grader, and a 5th grader. And again, I'm touching on the KPIs that you're going to be discussing tonight. One of the factors for evaluating capacity and enrollment includes compact boundaries. How would increasing a potential travel distance by 50% to a high school align with metrics for a compact boundary? What consideration is being given to distance and compliance with federal safer routes to school law? A change in a high school assignment for some middle school students could result in significant increases in travel time and potential travel over treacherous roads and bridges that will not withstand a major earthquake, potentially stranding our students on the opposite side of the river from their homes. One other thing I ask you to consider is promoting a sense of community is another of the KPIs, and keeping neighborhoods together as much as possible. Our children will have their academic, social, and athletic lives dramatically changed if a significant boundary change occurs. You know, my kids have spent 8 years building relationships both in and out of school. And having longer travel times is going to take away time for them for their studies and for their athletics and other important life values. I ask the board to carefully consider the KPIs used and to consider all 20, not a specific list of 9. Thank you.
We have Brooke Cohen and Matt Marjanovic.
We're planning, excuse me. We were kind of planning to tag team this, so might as well just introduce ourselves first and then read through.
Hello, I'm Brooke Cowan, C-O-W-A-N.
And I'm Matt Marjanovic, M-A-R-J-A-N-O-V-I-C.
Matt and I developed a solution to the enrollment balancing problem and attempted to present it to DBRAC in a series of 6 2-minute public comments in the spring. This soft neighborhood model eliminates the need for frequent manual boundary changes, a critical piece of the current DBRAC proposal. We think the larger community is interested in understanding more about how our model works. Media reports and DBRAC summaries have unfortunately mischaracterized the model and its intents, so we have collected the 6 original comments into a single cohesive document which we emailed to each of you this morning. It is also available online at softneighborhoodmodel.org. We would like to take this opportunity to introduce the Soft Neighborhood Framework to you, the board, and to the larger community. The Soft Neighborhood Model has been referred to in DBRAC documents and in media reports as a soft boundary model, but in fact, it is not a boundary model at all. It is a neighborhood model that places students in schools close to their homes. It is a dynamic enrollment balancing model that enables long-term enrollment stability for all schools. It is an equitable model that encourages the mixing of populations and curtails the ability of families with more resources to buy into the public school of their choice. Within our framework, children are assigned to one of the several schools that are closest to their home. The criteria used for making a final assignment are 1, proximity, and 2, capacity. The proximity part means that if school A is closer than school B, then assignment to A is more likely than assignment to B. The capacity part means that the model will assign the right number of students to each school according to target capacities provided by the district. In other words, the model assigns children to schools using an algorithm that satisfies each school's target enrollment, but is otherwise more likely to place them closer to their home. Its performance, in fact, the performance of any enrollment system considered by the district, should be measured by concrete, objective criteria, such as how balanced the enrollments are at each school, how far students have to travel to get to school, how diverse the assignments are. The Soft Neighborhood Framework is not a school choice model. The Soft Neighborhood Model does not ask families to rank their preferred schools. Like any traditional neighborhood school model, the only input a family has is its home address.
The soft neighborhood model emerged from the observation that there is a tightly coupled relationship between boundaries, enrollment instability, and inequity. While the relationship between enrollment balancing and equity has been widely acknowledged, the critical role that boundaries play has not. School boundaries create tangible walls within our city that make it possible to say that these kids will never go to school with those kids. Boundaries encourage wealthier families to move away from bad geographic regions and cluster into good ones. By tying school assignment to real estate, boundaries drive housing prices up in some regions and down in others. Thus, boundaries facilitate enrollment imbalance, they facilitate socioeconomic stratification, and they turn public school assignment into a commodity. Boundaries are a historical artifact that have co-evolved with and reinforced the same racial and socioeconomic inequities that we as a community are struggling to overcome. Indeed, these boundaries are the defining feature of the enrollment system, which you are being asked to endorse tonight. Whether those boundaries are nudged around year to year or once a decade, the underlying system is the same and the end result will be the same. The soft neighborhood model is a powerful alternative to the PPS hard boundary system. This model emphasizes enrollment balancing and a sense of neighborhood, as well as mixing populations that would otherwise become stratified and segregated. We have implemented and tested the soft neighborhood model against 7 years of historical PPS enrollment data. We have defined 3 objective metrics for evaluating our model on the basis of balanced enrollments, travel distance, and school assignment diversity. Our experimental results suggest that the soft neighborhood model outperforms the historical hard boundary system with respect to enrollment balancing, that the soft neighborhood model still assigns students to schools reasonably close to home, and that the soft neighborhood model greatly improves assignment diversity. These empirical results demonstrate the potential of the soft neighborhood model as a robust and equitable solution to the enrollment balancing problem in PPS. We encourage you and the larger community to seriously consider the soft neighborhood model for PPS. Moreover, we would like to see compelling empirical evidence that the DBRAC proposal can actually achieve its stated balancing and equity goals, and we request an objective evaluation of the district's proposed solution in terms of the metrics we have defined. Any such evaluations must be implemented with transparency to the public. It should use a data set that has been properly anonymized and released to the public, and its entire methodology should be made available to the public for independent replication, verification, and validation. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom today. Did you make a presentation to DBRAC and then did they discuss your presentation?
I gave 6 2-minute public comments, so
Did they
in a
ever
sequence.
discuss those public comments that you know of, or?
There was very little time. There were, I think, 2 meetings where they had a few minutes to ask me some questions.
But not, they didn't really discuss it?
No, it was not, there was no time set aside for discussion.
Thank you very much.
Mike?
So I just want to be clear, so you have a different modeling approach than the district is using, and it's the soft boundary model? That's
Soft neighborhood.
Soft neighborhood model. So do you have information that puts that in context that you can share with the board?
It's in your box.
We are, oh, you sent it out? Okay, thanks.
It was kind of a little light though.
But I guess, oh, well, I guess we'll get to this in discussion. Okay, thank you. I'll look at that.
Thank you.
We have Eris Shi, Lori Lombardi.
Welcome.
Hello, hello everybody. My name is Eris Xie, XIE. I have 2 daughters in Portland Public School. I'm coming here just try to draw the concern of the impact of the school and community change on our students and the advocacy from parents. I'm afraid I probably need to repeat a lot of concerns the other person already addressed. So I have some questions to ask. The first one is, which is more important, the quality of education or enrollment balancing? If you tell me the important thing is enrollment, then my question, why not city set up a limit of the population or even set up a cap of house number in a certain area to control the enrollment? If the quality of the education is more important, why send kids from a school with high academic achievement to a school with less academic achievement? Does this fair to the students? How can you guarantee students can still keep their high performance in a school with less programs? I think we should do the opposite way. So can anybody answer me the question? Okay. My next question is related to my first one. So changing the school, also changing students' social life and community. Spending extra hours on traveling between school and home will disjoint their family and community life, resulting in decreasing academic performance. The third question is, how important is parents' advocacy? Do you think parents should spend hours? Do you think parents like to spend hours on traveling between home office and to school, which is located totally in a different community?
I do not think parents like to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we're receiving volunteership every year from the school. That means the school want the parents join them to see how their kids do well in the school. If you say, okay, parents' advocacy from this part is not important, I'm afraid I have to say you probably admit that you only want the parents to donate money, but not volunteering the school activity. Okay, my other question is, do you have any data or survey to show you will succeed in increasing enrollment by shifting kids? In another word, do you have the data on percentage of the parents would agree or have to send their kids to another school? If they are not willing to do this or they can find other options, this is not successful. I mean, the shifting kids to increase the enrollment balance. The last question will be the safety issue. Everybody knows crossing the bridge is not safe for kids and also for the families. If we have any natural disaster happen, that will separate the parents and our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lori Lombardi. Thanks for letting me speak today. Thanks for hearing all these voices. I can't imagine it's an easy job for you, and we certainly appreciate that we live in a place where we can be heard, and we know that you're listening, so thank you for that. I do have concerns about the redistricting of Portland schools and the effect that it can have on the community as a whole. I feel that there needs to be adequate time taken to thoroughly evaluate the redistricting decision-making process, and I feel that there needs to be representation from families from every district affected. I feel that there needs to be a full understanding at all levels the effects of fracturing a community and sending children on buses down hairpin turns and icy roads across rickety bridges for the sake of social engineering of our schools. I'm hoping that we approach the issue of school inequity in a different way. I'm hoping that we can focus on strengthening our schools, increasing the physical capacity in overcrowded schools, including collaboration with adjacent community colleges, and working on funding programs for children in underprivileged schools so that they have equal opportunity as well. Both my husband and I are involved in recruiting specialized talent to our city. These are workers who help our economy and help create a strong city. We also adore our local neighbors who have lived in their houses for generations. School systems are a draw for potential candidates relocating and an important factor in creating stability for our existing community members. A non-transparent process of redistricting causes a community to lose faith in the public school system. Family like mine invest their life savings to find homes in great school systems that we believe in, like Portland. As these schools start to shift under our feet, we start to lose our sense of stability and our faith in the public school system here. This has far-reaching consequences for the community, our economy, and our city as a whole. Please look at the data and see if redistricting does indeed have a positive effect. We've seen this fail in the past. We don't want to repeat past mistakes. Please listen to the voices of the parents and the children who will be affected by this change. Thank you.
Michael Jibak.
Greetings.
Thank you for letting me come up here tonight. My name is Michael Javak. I'm a parent of 2 students here at the Portland Public Schools. And I, once again, like many of these people, are talking about the realigning of the school districts and the balancing. If the purpose of the redrawing the school boundaries and the balancing is to improve education process for all students, how does the potential of increased travel times improve the process for those who will see travel times increase from anywhere to 50 to 100%? The increase in travel time would steal time away from homework, extracurricular activities, sleep, and most importantly, family. Family time, the time between students and parents, is critical, actually I would say essential, to the success of every student. I would like to see if there's been any studies, research done about the actual impact to the children in increasing this time, moving across the bridges, moving throughout the city district. I don't need to spend any more time up here. I just, I'm a concerned parent, and I want what's best for my children. I like my children. I like spending time with them. And I'm very fortunate that I think they like me too. So, thank you. You guys do have a very difficult job, and education is extremely important. I feel very fortunate. I went to public schools. I went to a public university, and the more we put into our public school systems, the better off the entire community will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there any board discussion on this resolution?
I just want to reiterate for our families that not only are there no foregone conclusions in this process, but there are not even any recommendations. And so please continue to engage in the DBRAC process and continue to come and communicate with us. And there are no secret plans behind the curtain that are already fully baked. And I've had a lot of communication from parents this week who are fearful that there are some decisions that are already set. And I just want to reassure you that that is not the case. It's an open process. Continue to engage in it, and thanks for coming here tonight.
If it was open, we would have been here all year.
Go ahead.
It's been on.
Thanks. I'm just reiterating a little bit about what Amy said. Also would encourage all of you to go to the website. I was the board, still am a board representative on DBRAC, joined by Julia Esparza Brown. We're both happy to hear from you just last month, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Always available to hear comments from parents, both on our personal our district email. But I did also want to invite you to come to DBRAC meetings. You've heard some people who were here. Those are always going to be open to the public. And then I guess the last part is, I'm a little surprised. I didn't get to look at my email today at the number of people who are coming up, and it seems like you already have an idea about you think what's going to happen. And I would just tell you again, there is nothing now that has been developed. There is a framework that we're working with, and it includes things like being concerned about transportation and distances and those kinds of things, distance to school. When the framework is the thing that we're looking at tonight, after we finish with this framework, then the staff is going to bring a few scenarios to us, but they have to run it through a framework. There has to be something that we look at consistently across all the schools in the district. And so the staff will bring us some scenarios. DBRAC will see those. Those are all meetings that are open to the public again, so come on and come to the meetings. They'll make a recommendation to the superintendent. In the middle of all this, we'll be having lots of public comment. We'll be going out to the communities. There'll be meetings. You'll have an opportunity to come and tell us what you think about the different scenarios. So there's going to be lots and lots of public comment and outreach to the community going on over the next couple of months. And I encourage everybody, all of you, and for all of you to connect with all of your communities to make sure that you're following all that and that you are letting us know what you think.
If you go on
Your
YouTube,
speakers,
you can
excuse
see
me, sir.
that the staff said
Go.
only KPIs would be used for the initial scenarios, and it did not include
Sir.
transportation. It is untrue. It is on YouTube.
Please.
It is public record. Only
community members and to all the people who are listening to us at home to say, I know how concerned parents are about these processes. I had kids in Portland Public Schools, and I know I was concerned every time something like this came up. Stay involved, contact us, let us know what you think, and be involved in the public side. There are also, there have been some town halls, Google Town Halls, another place to reach out and to get involved on those. So just stay informed and let us know. Don't wait till it's all the way at the end and go, oh my gosh, I don't agree with this. Make sure that you're coming in to those meetings that we're having ahead of time.
So I had
Any other?
So I had, oh, Steve.
Mike, no, Mike.
So Pam and Julie, I had a question about the KPIs and the testimony. So what I wanted to understand is, there's 9 KPIs that have been selected?
No, there are no KPIs selected yet.
So can you explain some of the confusion around people feeling like it's been narrowed down?
And actually, we also have
No, I
Judy
can't-
and
I
John
can't-
here.
I can't explain that, but maybe.
Let's have Judy or John come on up and speak to that.
Jason's
Yeah.
here.
Or Jason.
Sarah's here.
Sarah.
Lots of people staff people who have been involved in the process.
Judy, it's good to see you with a few less bandages.
Good evening.
And
Thank
one
you
arm.
for those kind words. Judy Brennan, Enrollment Director.
Sarah Singer, Senior Director, System Planning and Performance.
John Isaacs, Chief of Community Involvement and Public Affairs.
And Jason Trombley, Chair of DBRAC.
I think we just have a moment here where we were happy to try and clarify the process that we're moving through. It is vitally important that we know that the values framework that the committee developed is endorsed, so that we can then take that framework and move it into more concrete and substantive measures. Now, at the last DBRAC meeting, we shared some information about the full set of measures that are listed in the administrative directive that governs this. And we had a very brief discussion about places where staff felt strongly we could validate those measures, we could deliver sort of concrete ways of measuring, is this scenario better or worse than what the past was? We did pause and say, take some time to think that over. That was the committee's request. We're happy to honor it. And there's time on the next agenda to further develop what those KPIs are. People get a chance to look at a sample of what they could be, not real changes, because we do not, as you said, have any proposed real changes at this time.
So Judy,
What's on the table tonight is the values framework.
Correct. Just the
values
framework.
framework.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can you, I'm still confused, can you explain how the KPIs relate to the values framework?
Yes, and I would say that an important part of the framework is that it makes slight revisions to the administrative directive that's already in place regarding boundary change.
Okay.
States that that those and other factors that should make this a strong process should govern all the different kinds of levers, not just boundary change. So then we take those statements, such as, help me with the exact words. Sorry, I don't have my copy of the administrative directive.
Optimal use of facilities.
Optimal use of facilities. And we say, okay, so what does that mean? DBRAC has encouraged us to focus on right-sizing schools. So in this case, optimal use is probably coming down to which schools will be overcrowded, that is, don't have enough classrooms for teachers, and which schools are under-enrolled, that is, less than 2 sections per grade level. So those are examples of how we would operationalize the concept that's in the administrative directive that DBRAC has reviewed and provided some input on.
The other thing I would add is having a set of key performance indicators. The indicators come to life when you can actually compare them to a map. It's really hard to talk about KPIs in the abstract. So part of the objective in the next meeting is to take a sample or a made-up scenario and apply the existing set of KPIs to them, and then people can provide feedback and they can say these make sense, these don't make sense. And so that's literally where we are in the process.
One other really important thing I think that I hope is helpful and that is that staff has been trying to find the key indicators that we think that we can display about any change anywhere. This is at the first level. Underneath that, there will clearly be impacts at a school by school level that may indeed, like cross a major arterial, involve other kinds of factors that are pretty unique to that situation that of course we want to pay attention to. If people call it out, we want to be able to see it. But because this is a district-wide process, we're trying to find the key pieces that people can see and understand and use comparatively at the high level before they start going down school by school by school.
Yeah, and I'm still confused. I mean, what I'm sensing from the people that testified is a concern that the key performance indicators will somehow put boundaries around decisions that can be made. They'll create a context that could drive decisions in a certain direction. And so what I want to hear or understand is if there are 9 key performance indicators, what I heard is some of the committee wanted more discussion on it, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that more performance indicators could be added.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
There are not 9 KPIs at this particular, they're still working on the KPIs.
Right.
Yeah, and
I think there's just confusion generated by some that we've already done this work, and we haven't. It's not all done yet.
Actually, it's generated by you. It's all here.
It's not done. It's not
I'm
complete.
sorry, I've
Let's
tried
not
to do
respond to
before,
that.
but I was a witness, Scott Bailey is here, I will try to keep my composure. This is a draft, that is clear, I admit that. But the PPS staff, I think some of you here, you can look on the video, it's on public record, they indicated that the
Yeah, no.
initial.
Excuse me, you're out of order. Steve, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, do we have a draft that shows 9 KPI? That's one of my questions.
You can ask
Do we have them? Can I go look?
So I'll just note, all the documents that are presented at DBRAC meetings are all available on the website, and we can send that link back to you, so any of you can review this document.
Okay. Steve, another question?
Yeah, I have a question. We're going to get some maps here pretty soon? I'm a big map guy on this. Want to be able to visualize it?
Yeah,
So, we believe by the end of October, we'll have, if all goes well, if we're following the framework, if you vote on it tonight, we'll, by the end of October, have some actual proposals for change. What we'll have later this week is a sample, as Sarah indicated, that we're using for instructional purpose to help familiarize the committee and others with the tools, the information that will be in front of them soon, learn to read it. And because the committee is a great resource and a great representative body, we want their feedback on formatting and on whether the measures that we're showing are correct. So that's what we're going to do this week. The map you see this week won't have actual proposals or actual changes.
Are we going to get, this is my actual question here now, Tom, and then I have a comment on the KPIs, which are marked up there. Are we going to get a map and something surrounding this idea about the soft neighborhoods? I mean, can we get something on that to compare that? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not a guy that kind of jumps on new stuff. I just don't do. But I read that through, and it made a lot of sense to me. And I thought, well, this should be something we should be looking at and discussing. Can we get a map on? I guess asking the superintendent here, Tom. Can we get a map on that too?
And I'm actually looking at the committee that heard the
So
proposal
my
here.
understanding is that our solver can produce that type of map, and we haven't taken it off the table. I mean, I don't know how to say that in any other way, but we are like creating on Thursday a sample scenario, just for illustrative purposes, because it actually takes, we think it's really important to create a product that people can read and understand, and so we have to put that out in front of someone to test it. So that's what's gonna happen. And then as DBRAC wrestles with the trade-offs and so forth, we will produce whatever we can to support the process.
So is that a yes or a no there, sir?
Yes, that's a yes.
We're gonna get
If
a
you-
soft
if you want-
neighborhood
If you're
map?
interested, if we're directed to do so, we can do that.
Or somebody gonna
I would
direct
say
you to do so,
we,
or-
the capability exists. We're as staff operating at the direction of the committee. So we haven't, there's no recommendation that's come out of the District-Wide Boundary Review Advisory Committee to look at that model. The committee actually addressed this somewhat when they did their presentation a few months ago. If the committee had further discussion and said, we'd also like you to do that, then the staff will do it. So everything the staff's doing is at the direction of the recommendation that's come out of committee right now, which is the values framework that's before you tonight.
And
So I'm just
actually, you
gonna
know what
say-
I want to be able to do is walk you back and just tell you what the values framework is again, because I feel like we're now getting confused with the work going on in the committee now. So let me just do the bullets out of the summary document for you, just to say, here's the stage we're at with this, because there's a bunch of work ahead of us still. What the guiding values were that were put forward: equity in process and outcomes, access to equitable and effective programs, and facilities that provide appropriate environment for effective programs. Those are the 3 guiding values. The desired outcomes: strong and stable enrollment in all of our schools, clear, responsive, and transparent process, and evidence that the racial equity lens has been incorporated into enrollment balancing process. And then part of what is being put forward is that we apply this values framework to all the components of enrollment changes, not just boundaries. So transfer adjustments, building capacity changes, regional program relocation or resizing, grade reconfigurations, boundary change, and opening or closing schools. And then what the committee also did is they said, here are the other things we want you to consider, and they gave us some commentary on the pace of change for decisions that get made, resources required for implementation, technical components involved in a change, community input, the long-term process, and alternative enrollment methods for neighborhood schools. Part of what this values framework and the board agreeing to the values framework does is it says, great, we affirm the work so far, and it lets the committee go forth and then start putting forth scenarios and maps and really specific things that we get to then grapple with and
I just checked and make sure we were
yeah.
gonna do the other one.
But this right now is the framework document that they came and presented in July and that you guys talked about at your last meeting, that really is just, again, affirmation that we're on track with the values, and then allows the committee to go forth and continue to do work.
All right.
Okay,
So let's
finish
vote
up?
on this.
Should I finish up?
Yeah.
Let me clarify one other thing about the soft
Yeah.
things, Steve, just
Sure.
for a group. So, I remember, if this is wrong, you guys let me know, but I vaguely remember, I don't vaguely remember your testimony when you came for public comment. I remember you very well, but I wasn't there when we had the conversation at the next meeting. But my recollection is that everybody was very interested in the soft boundary piece, but the problem with it is that it starts with kindergarten, and we need to have some changes happen now in our schools in order to make them be more equitable across the district. And if we are only doing it when we're starting at kindergarten, then it's going to take us 10 to 12 years before we get to a point. Wasn't that pretty close to what we were doing, Jason?
So, thank you, Chair Curler and Director Knowles. In addition to that, what I think was of a priority for the membership, and I'll just go back to the last paragraph in our framework on the soft boundary model. So there are a couple of things to this. The last paragraph says, the model success could be achieved if PPS is able to ensure a baseline of equitable academic program offerings at every school, which could help reduce creating a winners versus losers environment in a choice system. We will only know how well it might work with further research by Portland Public Schools. This model should be evaluated after PPS has developed plans for offering baseline level of academic program offerings at all schools, as well as grade configuration. So I think the important tension that DBRAC recognized was we can evaluate this, but there are certain structures that we have to fix first in order to really evaluate the effectiveness. So for example, you could have the access to potential schools in North Portland, but that's going to look different in Southeast, where you have immersion, neighborhood schools, and focus options. So once the system is kind of addressed through the boundary review process or the enrollment balancing process, we'll be able to say, once we've hopefully improved equitable access to offerings across the system, that was DBRAC's higher priority. So we can look at it, but after certain systemic issues are fixed first.
Go ahead, you bet.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
So is that a no? I'm still trying to figure out whether it's yes or no. I'm still like to see a yes here, that we would look at this soft neighborhood model and see how it comes out. It may not come out, that's fine, but at least we would look at it.
I think
and
it's a
find
yes.
out.
We all.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
No one's really giving me a yes. We are now, the superintendent is.
Yes.
Sarah, you're saying yes
Yes,
now.
sir.
And he's saying yes now? Because he just said no. I hate to do this, but I'm a yes, and later after the meeting, people say, oh, no, they didn't say
May
yes.
I?
They said no
Yes.
or not. Back and
What I've
forth.
heard, Director Buell, is yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, it's been at the, but it so far hasn't been the direction of the committee to do so. One thing that I want to point out is that you have policy that says students have a guaranteed neighborhood school at this time. A soft boundary says you have a guaranteed school nearby, but it may not be the same school every year for your address. So that could be a challenge to your existing policy. We don't have any policy changes going forward at this time. So if you were to try and implement that later, you might also have to
change
tackle
policy,
your
sure,
policy
but
level.
the answer is,
Just be aware.
because you said yes, we can, but the answer that I'm still looking for is yes, we will bring forward a model of this. Now, Sarah said yes, we will. Are you saying now yes, we will?
Yeah, I think it would help for clarification for staff if you're looking for a model, if you're looking for us to model that as part of your deliberations, or it's something that you're asking the committee to do, I think that would help. But the capability is here. How we do it is what the capability exists.
If
I hate it when I keep winning all these little arguments.
All
I
right.
just-
So if I could clarify.
Scenario building. It's not precluded by the framework that they're considering tonight. It could be one of the
Why
scenarios.
It's an
don't I make a
alternative
motion?
It's
to-
an
Want me to make a
alternative
motion, Tom?
scenario.
No, we don't need a motion.
Okay.
We don't need a motion.
Can I please make a
No,
clarification?
I'm sorry, you cannot.
It does not
Be-
change
because-
assignment every year.
because we're not-
The assignment does not change every year, that's
Thank
just
you.
not correct.
Thank you. So, I think it's the intent of the board, anybody can raise their hand and say no, that both the committee and the staff take the soft model and use it in their evaluations.
And bring forth
And
a
in the
map.
scenarios, and bring it back with everything else you're doing to give us the recommendation. So is
So
that?
you want the board, you want the
To-
committee to consider it?
Yes.
Before it ever comes back here?
Yes.
Yes, I understand.
So, is that clear?
No, we want them to, when everything comes back, we want one of them to be one of the soft
Right.
models.
Yes, it starts
Right,
there.
that was
Committee
different
to
than what you
consider
said.
it.
Yes.
I've been doing this now for a long time, and
All right.
getting those words right is really critical.
Okay, anything
Okay,
else?
I do
And
have
then I'd like to
something.
vote on it.
Okay, last thing.
Yes.
The people who kept saying there were 9 marked off things, you were dead right. To prioritize as KPIs, 9 of them, and they're marked right here on the thing, X, 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 X. You were dead right.
Okay.
It says drafted by
It's a
one other
draft
person.
document, there
Well,
are
I know, but it's
others.
on the draft. It's prioritized as the
All
draft.
right.
is what
Hey.
this is. Thank you.
We're going to vote on this. So the board will now vote on Resolution 5149.
More time.
All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no.
No.
Are there any abstentions? 5149 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with student representative.
7, I voted no.
I'm sorry. 6-1 with Representative Davidson voting?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Superintendent Smith, would you like to introduce the Smarter Balance assessment results?
I would, and actually, I would like to call up Joe Suggs, who is our Research Evaluation and Assessment Director, and Mary Anderson, who's our District Test Coordinator, and they're going to provide you with our final results from the Smarter Balance assessment that students took last spring, and also tell you about planning for the coming year. And they will also talk about the evaluation that we completed of this year's testing and recommendations that are being made in the go forward. So Joe and Mary.
Good evening.
And actually,
Joe
let me
Suggs.
just say one more thing. I'm going to ask that you guys let them get through their entire presentation before we do questions, just because they will probably address a number of things that will be questions as you're going through. So, Joe.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us a few minutes this evening. We would like to review with you how Portland Public Schools students performed this first year of the Smarter Balanced Assessment. I'm going to review some expected and actual student achievement as measured by the assessment, as well as some data on student participation on the tests. I'll recap a couple of recent policy decisions related to Smarter Balance that affect our students, and then I'll turn the mic over to Mary to share lessons learned from this year of testing and some of our planned and potential communications around student performance and expectations for this school year. The Smarter Balanced Assessment measures student learning in the areas of English Language Arts, often referred to as ELA, and mathematics. Students receive a scale score on the assessment. The consortium, the Smarter Balanced Consortium, has defined cut scores along the achievement scale that divides student performance into 4 levels. For the 2014-15 year, ODE has not defined names for these levels other than level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4, with level 4 being the highest. Students performing at level 3 or level 4 are considered to be on track for college and career readiness. Within the English Language Arts subject, students' results are reported in the areas of reading, writing, listening, and research. And within the math test, student results are reported in the areas of concepts and procedures, problem solving and modeling and data analysis, and communicating reasoning. These areas within each subject are referred to as claims, just to throw a little lingo out there. Some key points to keep in mind as we review student achievement this evening. First of all, this is a baseline year or a starting point for the new tests measuring learning on the Common Core standards. Because it is a different test measuring new learning targets, it is not possible to compare student performance on this test to performance on other tests such as the Oaks reading and math assessments. And then Smarter Balanced test results are only one indicator among many of student learning and achievement, and that should be kept in mind when reviewing any summative test results. The Smarter Balanced Consortium predicted levels of student achievement based on field test results and other factors. This chart shows predicted and actual results on the English Language Arts test. Data shown are the percent of students in the level 3 and level 4 categories combined. This first set of bars is the projected achievement by the Smarter Balanced Consortium. As we saw in the data released publicly a couple of weeks ago in the statewide performance exceeded the predicted results. Portland students, in turn, exceeded both the predicted and actual state results. Despite this better than expected performance of our students, the results from the first year of this assessment highlight more than ever existing achievement gaps and show that all students still have plenty of room to grow. This slide demonstrates for English Language Arts the persistent racial achievement gap. For example, 42% of white students achieved at level 4, while only 6% of black students achieved at level 4. Here is the chart showing the predicted and then state and PPS actual results on the mathematics assessment. The trend is similar, although the level of performance is a little bit lower for level 3 and level 4. And again, a chart showing highlighting the racial achievement gap on the math test. With regard with regard to student participation on the tests, the federal and state expectation is that at least 94.5% of students overall, and for each accountability group, which includes students by race and ethnicity, English language learners, special education, and economically disadvantaged students, so 94.5% of these groups must participate in the tests. Portland Public Schools fell short of the 94.5% participation target in most student groups. And the actual rates are shown here. The lighter bar on the left is the English Language Arts, and the darker bar is the math assessment participation rates. The U.S. Department of Education has contacted states who missed participation targets this last year and asked state superintendents to report on how they will address the lower participation rates at the state and local district levels. In turn, the Oregon Department of Education has asked Portland Public Schools and other Oregon districts with lower participation how they will address this concern for the coming year, or for the current school year. High school participation was noticeably lower than elementary and middle grade participation. There are a couple of factors that contribute to this. First of all, students who met their essential skills graduation requirements on the Oaks test in their 9th or 10th grade years were allowed to bank those scores for essential skills. Also, students who met those requirements through other means, such as the PSAT, had less motivation to participate in the Smarter Balanced assessments. As with other grade levels, we also had a significant number of parents who elected to exempt their students from testing this past year. And in addition, high school students were more likely to refuse to test than students in lower grades. It is important to keep in mind these lower participation rates as we look at student achievement, because the student achievement, either at the district and school level for some schools, will not or may not be representative of all students in those locations who may have tested, but who chose to opt out. Now we'll take a look at PPS student performance in a little bit more detail. Before we dive into a couple of the graphs, there are a couple of things to keep in mind regarding what is represented in the charts that we've put together. While the state of Oregon is including student performance on the extended assessment in the results that they've released publicly, and the extended assessment is an alternate assessment for students with the most severe cognitive disabilities. We have included these results from, we have excluded extended assessment results from the PPS data in order to present a baseline view of the Smarter Balanced results only. In addition, students who were home or private schooled but took the test, foreign exchange students, students in their first year of U.S. school enrollment, and students in a general education setting for less than 40% of the time are excluded in the results that you'll be seeing here. These considerations are to maintain consistency with state reporting as much as possible and consistency in our reporting from year to year. On the next couple of slides, you will see some graphs showing testing rates. There's a little pie chart in these graphs that shows testing rates. These are not calculated exactly the same as the state participation rates. And although the numbers are similar, they will not be identical to other data that you may have seen due to differences in calculation methods. The not tested groups included in the charts here include students who tested but answered too few items to generate a score, students whose tests were invalidated for any reason, and students whose parents exempted them from testing. This first slide shows English language arts performance, and using this slide, I'll do a quick orientation to the report. At the top of the report, the subject area, in this case English language arts, or math, but this is the ELA report, is identified, as well as whether this is a report focusing on overall student achievement or on the claim level data. This particular report is for overall achievement. The large colored bars in the center show achievement by performance level for the district. And to the left of the color bars are tabular results representing the same numbers. Also shown is the number of students participating in the test, just to the right of the bars. And to the right of that set of data is the small pie chart that shows the percent of students who tested, in this case at the district. The remainder of the chart displays bar charts of student performance for various student groups, including by grade level, gender, race and ethnicity, and then by English language learners, economically disadvantaged, special education, and talented and gifted identified students. Overall, 63% of students in Portland Public Schools achieved at a level 3 or level 4 on the ELA test of students who participated in the test. This slide shows the district performance on the mathematics test. Overall, 52% of students achieved a level 3 or 4 on this test. Also included in your packet, but not part of the slide presentation tonight, is the list of schools with each school's overall test results. And those are grouped by K-5, K-8, middle school, high school, and then by our multiple pathways configurations to allow for some comparison. Now I'm going to shift gears and talk about a couple of important policy updates. The first one is that on September 17th, the Oregon State Board of Education voted to adopt Smarter Balanced cut scores that can be used to demonstrate proficiency on the essential skills graduation requirements of reading, writing, and mathematics. For context, by state law, students cannot be held accountable to a higher graduation standard unless they're notified by spring of their 8th grade year. And so in order to comply with that requirement, the Oregon Department of Education had to do some statistical number crunching to identify smarter balanced cut scores that are equivalent to the 236, for example, on the Oaks assessment that students have used in the past. And those were the scores that were proposed and adopted by the state board. The math cut score is 2543 on the overall math scale, which is equal to the cut score for level 2 achievement. The reading cut score is a 2515 on the reading claim of the ELA test, which falls in the lower end of level 2. And then the writing score is 2583 on the writing claim of the English Language Arts test, which is equal to the cut score for level 3 achievement. We have communicated these cut scores to central office and building administrators through an administrator's connection notice, as well as directly to high school administrators. We will also be communicating these cut scores to students and parents when we send home their test results toward the end of this week and next week. And Mary will comment a little bit more on that report in a moment. The second policy update is House Bill 2655, also known as the Student Assessment Bill of Rights. This passed earlier this year. This bill requires the Department of Education to develop communications for families that districts will share regarding state testing. This bill also directs ODE to develop a statewide form for parents to excuse their students from testing if they choose to do so. This bill does not go into effect until January of 2016. Until that time, current laws regarding testing exemptions are still in effect. ODE has determined that the intent of this bill with regard to testing exemptions applies only to the Smarter Balanced assessments. Current rules around testing exemptions for other state testing requirements, such as Oak Science and ELPA, will remain in effect after January 1st. ODE plans to release forms, communications, and further information about this on November 9th. And that concludes my portion of this. I'll turn the mic over to Mary, and she can talk about a couple other pieces.
So I'm going to speak to the lessons learned from the first year of administration. The full evaluation was included in your packet, and there was a summary that was provided in addition to the full summary that was actually geared towards school leaders. Before I go into some of our findings, I do want to give you a little background for you, but also everyone listening as far as what this evaluation included. Systems Planning Performance conducted this evaluation based upon direct interviews from principals and surveys to test administrators. And those test administrators include teachers across our district, and also the test coordinators at the school level. There was a survey given to them with different questions, and those test coordinators include teachers, vice principals, assistant principals, and principals in buildings. And so I felt as though there was one voice that was definitely missing after speaking to those. We needed to talk to some of the kids. We did get the opportunity to interview almost 100 students that were in attendance at the SUN program over the summer to ask them about what their experience was during testing. The purpose of this evaluation was to focus in on the operational end of state assessment administration in this first year. There were some structural changes to this new test that were anticipated to cause some major complications. And so I'll go into the findings. As a highlight of the findings, there were some actual areas of good news from our test coordinators and principals, particularly where they did comment on increased operational support that research and evaluation offered to our school buildings. That was generally very positive. Scheduling and coordinating the variety of sections of the new test, since there's multiple parts to each of the tests, posed a lot of challenges and a variety of challenges across buildings. There was different types of information getting out at different times, and so definitely have areas to grow as far as communication is concerned with all of our buildings and all the people in our buildings. And I'm actually going to skip to the last bullet. Test coordinators particularly commented that the political climate surrounding the new tests made it extraordinarily difficult for them to conduct their operational duties as test coordinators in the school buildings. But I have to share with you the thing that really impacted me the most. That was actually hearing from the students. And the student experience from what these kids said. Now, most of them, the vast majority were in grades 3, 4, and 5 because they were in attendance, SEM program, and that's who we had access to. But the things that they commented on, for the most part, were things that we do have control over in our buildings. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is that there were large challenges in the administration of these tests last year, but that we do have some ability to improve the experience of our students during the testing. And as district test coordinator, that's my primary focus this year in providing support to our test coordinators in our buildings and building schedules that can help positively impact the environment in the elements of this test that we can control. For communications this year, as Joe did mention earlier, one of the pieces that's coming out very shortly are the individual student reports. This is actually an annual expectation for us to distribute these to families each year. Those will be mailed to homes the week of October 12th. The reports this year have been redesigned primarily to incorporate the new tests in the way that those are shown by the ODE designed reports. ODE does create individual student reports for schools and districts to use. Unfortunately, due to our size, the way that we get those reports makes it extraordinarily difficult to mail them home, and so we create our own so we can mail it more efficiently. And so we did redesign to reflect some of the changes that ODE had in their design, and also we decided to include all state tests in the reports this year. You have 2 samples in your packet, but I did want to call out a couple pieces to the new individual student reports. The cover page provides a brief summary of every state assessment included in this report. And this page, for those of our families who prefer communications in one of our other 5 supported languages, also have this page translated, and that will be mailed along with the rest of it. Here's a sample of what the English language arts scores look like in the new presentation. There's a slider view, and we see the overall score at the top. The overall performance level is the shaded level across the top, and then the claim levels scores are shown below. You'll also notice there's some text at the bottom there, and that is the ODE provided descriptors of the overall performance level for that particular test. One other thing I'd like to add that you actually don't see in your samples, but for those students that are currently 12th graders who took the test last year as an 11th grader, if their score did or did not meet essential skills, it is also displayed on this report directly, so there's no guessing game. They don't have to check something else to see if their score made the cut. Then there's also a sample of mathematics. It's a similar design with the overall score above and the claim levels below. Another piece that I'd like to share with you, there are multiple examples in your packet, but I want to explain why we have it there. As Joe mentioned earlier, Federal Department of Education has contacted state offices of education regarding student participation in annual tests, state assessments, and in turn ODE has contacted superintendents of districts and schools across Oregon that did not meet participation requirements. Deputy Superintendent Noor has requested that we provide what PPS has done and will do to address student participation, as well as referred us to the ODE Smarter Balanced Communications Toolkit. These resources are intended by ODE to support school and district-wide communication plans, and you were provided a few samples in your packet. This toolkit currently includes sample letters for building leaders to use to address families. There are a variety of PowerPoint presentations geared towards staff and for families. There are also several messaging guides in the form of talking points, frequently asked questions, and even scripts for robocalls or recorded messages to go out to families, and many handouts with similar information about the tests. I want to thank you for your time tonight, and we look forward to discussion as to how much or if any of these materials we may use during this year's communications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments? Steve? Mike?
I had, I'm sorry, I had a question, Mary, about the administration lessons learned. well, two questions on that slide. One was information about and understanding of the test widely varied by role. And then the last one, political climate was a considerable challenge and impacted operational administration efforts. Can you say more about what those points mean?
So what we found was it was asymmetric information depending on role. And so depending upon who was answering some rather similar questions, whether they would be building principals, school test coordinators, regardless of their role, and teachers who were test administrators, they were definitely getting different information. And so so that's what we found as far as how that all, that was something that we didn't anticipate finding.
So on that point, do you think the answers were different because people had different opinions, or the information that was distributed wasn't, uniformly understood?
I think that both had a role to play, to be honest. Absolutely, people's personal opinions about the test came through in the survey responses and the interview questions, absolutely. But the purpose of the evaluation was to evaluate the administration itself to determine what would we do similarly or different this coming year. And we did find that there was a difference in understanding of things that shouldn't have been there. So I think that one of the things, I know one of the things this year would be working on building communication within school buildings, so that test coordinator isn't the only person that's the font of knowledge, but try to build more of a team approach for administrating the school buildings.
Great. And then on that point, the political climate, what challenges did those pose on the operational side?
Well, then I'd actually call you to the first few pages. There's a summary of each of the kind of different groups of stakeholders. And there is, sorry, I'm just getting the page. I'm going to give you the correct number.
The summary of the report.
The summary for test coordinators, I think, is the most indicative of this finding and really illustrates what I'm saying far better than I could. One test coordinator, so I'm on page 6 of the evaluation, and it's some.
So can you just show? I'm sorry, I'm not tracking. You're on? Is it this document? Then?
No. Yeah, but I'm inside of the document on page 6.
Page 6. Okay.
I just didn't want to say this from memory.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
The quotes pulled here were indicative of many quotes from this stakeholder group. And I'd like to call your attention to the final bullet point under the test coordinator section on the middle of page 6. This is quotes from test coordinators in school buildings. It sometimes felt like we were the bad guys because we were sharing info that was not readily accepted or appreciated. Teachers and parents who were philosophically or politically opposed to testing made the whole season pretty unbearable. Now, this is from the test coordinators that were trying to do an operational job, create testing schedules, inform people when they were going to be testing, where they were going to be testing, and it was rather operational. And so these people that were trying to perform their duties encountered a lot of challenges in trying to share information about when they were testing, who was testing, in what room, what days, and gathering information back from teachers about making decisions around operational choices. And they encountered a lot of difficulties because they also had to address the political beliefs and whatnot.
So they were basically the messengers that got the brunt of the dissatisfaction. So how would you address that? Have you thought about what ways you would address that this coming year?
I hope to be able to try to pull apart the operational duties that many of these people who are test coordinators or teachers are trying to do away from the political positioning and messaging so that they're able to do this job that they're doing outside of their regular duty hours for the most part.
Okay.
So that they're able to take care of that piece of it, to make good decisions for their students and their buildings, to make sure that they're really optimizing the testing environment for those kids that are testing, and allow other people in the building to work with communicating with their community and with teachers.
Well, I was just going to respond to your response. So I just wanted to say thanks. I got the impression from looking at this that because it was the first year and because it's a pretty politicized event, it was pretty difficult, and I appreciate that you did this surveying that gives sort of, from my perspective, a perspective of the people on the ground, the people that were directly affected, what their feedback is, and I appreciate that you're trying to incorporate that into the next iteration, so thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll go, Julie, do you have a?
I was just curious too, if we have participation rates disaggregated by subgroups, that would be helpful. And then I've also asked Amanda, I think, to help us really understand the patterns here that we're seeing that reinforce our, longstanding achievement disparities, that to have the data really disaggregated by subgroups at the school level, so that would really help us looking at, as a board, do we have instructional gaps to fill in so that we can really start impacting the achievement rate based on assessments like this that kind of give us a broad brushstroke of achievement patterns across groups. So that would be helpful to me then, if we could drill down a little further into the data.
This report that we reviewed a few minutes ago is also available for each school in the
Yes.
district, and they're posted on our webpage. Did we put the link is on the bottom of this slide. And then
Right. And I think I want a little more specifics that I had asked for, to include things like English learners' English proficiency levels that'll help us really understand more specifically as to the types of instructional needs that we have.
Sure.
So, and I've sent that list out so that can be shared.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I would add to what Julie said, not just instructional needs, but also instructional bright spots, like for us to be able to
Mhm.
identify within our own district who is doing really well with
Right.
particular groups of students, so that we can make sure that we share those
Absolutely.
practices. I did have a clarification I wanted to ask for, though, which was, so with the large number of high school juniors who didn't do Smarter Balance because they had the other two options to meet their essential skills, that doesn't, there's no waiver or anything from our overall state participation levels for them, though, so they still, that still counts as part of a decreased participation on that.
correct.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for your evaluation. That was extremely thorough, and clearly lessons learned. So great job on that. Appreciate it.
In this climate in particular,
Yeah.
so great.
Yeah. Steve?
Thank you, Mary, for that, for this evaluation. This is what I tried to get us to say we were going to do when we weren't. Did we, the one group of people that I didn't hear you say that we talked to was, and maybe I just misunderstood, was regular classroom teachers. Did you interview regular classroom teachers? Or, because we did the coordinators, and you did principals, you did kids, and you did, there was another one?
So the third group were test administrators, and the way for
Test
Yeah,
administrators.
the way for me to reach
Oh,
that group
mhm.
of people was to email all people with all teachers, and there's other people other than teachers who had a current Oaks portal account to administer the tests, which also included teachers that didn't administer these tests, but may have administered like the ELPA tests. And so that email went out to 1,650 people.
So did any of those people come back and say, geez, you put some pressure on kids that we shouldn't be putting pressure on?
Yeah, and I'd be more than happy to share even more quotes than were included here. But those were,
So we did
the
do
indicative
that.
quotes were included.
And that was all anonymous? You could contact, you
Yes.
could come back
It's
anonymously?
completely anonymous.
Okay, good. Do you have could I see someplace the results, the data from that? Do we
Beyond
have-
what's provided here?
Yeah.
Sure,
Is there-
we can make.
Okay, that'd be
we can-
that'd be really helpful
Mhm.
for me. Maybe, it's not a secret to anybody probably in this room that I'm pretty opposed to the way that the testing works. And I'd like to ask, has anybody, I have a couple questions and I got a couple comments. Has anybody, and I don't want to pick on anybody in our school district because our school district's doing what we're told to do. And a lot of administrators in our school district have said, no, I don't agree with this stuff either, Steve. But I just don't want to come out and say it publicly, really, which is hard. I've talked superintendents and all sorts, people who just say, no, this is pretty much a waste of our time and money and energy and so forth. But I don't want to say it, but I'll say it, because I can't lose my job unless they recall me, and it's tough to recall somebody in this city. But have you ever seen this test, Mr. Suggs? Have you ever seen the questions on the test?
I have seen the practice test and the
By the
sample
practice
items.
test, but not the actual test.
They're
Has
secure-
anybody
they're
in our
secure
school
items.
district ever seen the actual test questions that we're actually doing for all this information? Has anybody ever seen that?
Test administrators who are proctoring the test have exposure to the items, but they are not supposed to
And
be
so,
looking at
like
the
our
items.
superintendent's never seen this test, right? The questions on it?
Sample questions.
Sample
same thing.
questions, but not the actual questions. And the sample questions were pretty well panned across about whoever you talked to. There was all sorts of panning of the sample questions, and people were making fun of them, and on and on and on and on. So we have no idea the quality of this test. So that would be one thing. Now,
Katie, have you seen it?
No. So we have no idea that, Ellie, I'm sorry. And so, if no one's seen the test, we don't really have an idea of the quality or what it's testing on. It says it's testing on reading, but when it says it's testing on reading, we're not sure it's actually testing on reading because we've never seen the test. And this is not the big point. My big point is this. We've never seen the test. We have no idea what it's testing on when it says it tests on reading. But we get a score back, like 2, 4, 6, 7. And that score in reading tells us, I can't figure out anything. I had a question, I talked for about 45 minutes to Derek Brown, who is really the ODE testing guy, 45 minutes. I said, look, we're spending millions and millions of dollars in the state of Oregon. We're spending in our school district a great deal of money on this testing. We're also spending huge amounts of time and energy on this testing, and we're also shutting down computer labs and shutting down our libraries. And I said, so what are we getting for that money and time and energy that we're spending? What is it we're getting? Can you tell me one thing that we get that can help us with one child, specifically to help a child? What are they weak in reading or strong in reading or anything? Same with mathematics. Do they know fractions or not know fractions? Same with writing. Are they doing paragraphing? How are their conventions? Conventions is a big deal in the Common Core, by the way. We don't teach it, but it's a big deal in the Common Core. So the question is, that I asked Derek Brown, can you tell me one thing we're getting for this money and time and energy? And Derek Brown's answer, which he would not admit to, he couldn't tell me anything, except he finally said this. He finally said, well, if you have an 8th grade student, you can tell if he's college and career ready. That was his answer. And I'm going, you're kidding, right? This is a joke, right? And he didn't take it very well, I don't think. I can't speak for him, but it didn't seem like he took it very well. But we don't have any 8th grade kids hardly at all who are college and career ready that I know of. For instance, if an 8th grader is going to want to be an airplane pilot, if he gets a higher score on this, is he doing better as an airplane pilot, moving in that direction? Or suppose he wants to be a plumber, or suppose he wants to be a teacher, or she wants to be a chef. Are they moving? It doesn't tell us anything at all about career. Nothing. 0, 0, 0, 0. Can it tell us something about, are they college ready? Generally, it can tell us this. It tells us 2 things. But we already know these 2 things. It tells us that kids who are in lower economic neighborhoods, generally, not always, and certainly not individually, but generally they score lower on achievement tests than kids who are in higher economic neighborhoods. Generally that's the case all the way across the country. There are exceptions you can find here and here, but generally that's the case. So it tells us that, except we already know that. And the second thing it tells us is this kid a pretty good student or not? So if you're up in the top 30%, level 4, you're probably a pretty good student. If you're in level 1, you're probably not. It doesn't tell us why you're a good student or not a good student or what you need to work on or anything at all. It just says, well, you're a pretty good student or not a good student. And so, but we already know that. Any teacher who's taught a kid for a month can tell you what kind of student the kid is. Probably 100% of our students. So I can't find anything, not one thing that we actually get that will help directly one student, directly one teacher, or directly one parent. And I would hope that our administration and our school board would tell the state, look, you want to give us a test? Fine, we'll take a test. We'll do your test. But give us a test that allows us to use it for something, because this is nothing. There's not a thing we can use it. But look at what we've done. I mean,
Steve,
look
you
at
got
what
any
we've
questions?
done. About done.
Okay.
Look what we've done here. It's unbelievable how much time, energy, and stuff we're putting into this, and we're not getting anything out of it that I can see. And so I'm saying, let's tell them. Let's call Derek Brown yourself and spend 45 minutes and tell him you don't know what you're talking about.
Julie.
I'd like to clarify a couple of things, and one is that the indicators say who's on track in grades prior to grade 11. In grade 11, I think it changes to who is college and career ready.
Grade 11's
The
different.
rest is the predictors for on track.
Grade 11 is different, Julie. You're right.
Yeah, which I just said. And I want to respond to the purpose of these tests versus the other kinds. So this is a summative type of test versus the formative tests that we use every day in our schools that are built to guide practice. So that has never been the purpose of this type of test. As a school board member and as an educator, I think there is value. I'm not going to speak to the actual test itself, the Smarter Balance test, but in the types of summative tests like this that help us with the things that I was asking for more data on, to help us really drill down to look at programs and identify, as you said earlier, well, let's find the bright spots that I know we have in our district that are showing excellent student performance even for our historically underachieving subgroups. So it's that kind of evaluation that will help guide us as leadership to determine what needs replication, where we might fill in some gaps, and then by the same token, we are continually doing formative assessment in all of our schools that do help guide that daily instruction. It can't be one or the other, and they work in tandem, but for the purpose of this helps us both, system-wide and then down to the individual student.
Mr. Just before anybody else want to say anything?
Just
Yeah.
that I would say this, to Julie's point, there's a conversation with superintendents and Oregon Department of Education on amount of time spent on a summative test, and how do we devote the maximum amount of our resources to formative assessments and minimum amount necessary to get the summative data that lets us evaluate the whole system. So it's an active conversation between superintendents and ODE at this moment.
Can I just reinforce that I totally validate that piece, is that, and we are all in agreement, we shouldn't be spending more time testing than instructing and allowing kids for all of the kinds of elective options that they need, and recess as well. So it's not one or the other.
Well, I think it kind of is not one or the other, but formative testing, I'm a 40-year school teacher, I kind of have a pretty good sense of the difference between the two. And this test does not even test the Common Core. I didn't even bring the Common Core into my argument. It doesn't test the Common Core because the Common Core is so immense that you can't test it. Psychometricians that I've talked to, I'll bet you, Mr. Suggs, I might even put you on the spot, but I'll bet you if you sit down and talk to him, and he'll tell you, no, there's no way you're testing the Common Core. It's way, 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 way too broad. It's like testing your knowledge of world history in a short test. And so we're not even testing whether our kids understand what we're teaching, because it doesn't work. This test does not do that. And it's just that it's a waste of our time and our energy. If we weren't shutting down our labs, if we were just giving this test to kids, I wouldn't complain. Why would I care? We give them the test a couple days, okay. But that we're shutting down our labs, we're shutting down our libraries, we're just spending huge amounts of time, and we're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars of money to do this test, and we're getting not really anything out of it. You can say, well, we know that at this school maybe you have some kids who aren't very good students. They already know that. Every teacher out there knows that. Every teacher can tell you all that information about students. So that's how I feel about it, and I just think it's crazy to defend it. From me, I'm not going to defend it.
Okay. Any other comments or Julie?
Yeah, I just want to thank you because I know that you're in a really difficult political climate. And Mike, it goes back to something you said earlier about I don't want to shoot the messenger. So thank you for sharing with us something that is not politically popular, and we have issues with it, but you've done a good job in, I think, trying to bring out multiple perspectives on it, and so that we have those lessons learned.
Yeah,
great report.
Very appreciated. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right. So, second reading of the tax exempt bond post-issuance compliance. First reading was held on the amended tax exempt bond post-issuance compliance policy on September 1. Steve, excuse me. After 21 days of being open for public comment, the board is ready to vote on the proposed amendments. The board will now consider Resolution 5150, revision of the tax exempt bond post-issuance compliance and continuing disclosure policy. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Director Constam moves and Director Anthony seconds the motion to adopt Resolution 5150. Ms. Powell, is there any public comment?
No, there isn't.
Is there any board discussion on this issue? Seeing none, the board will now vote on Resolution 5150. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Resolution 5150 is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Davidson voting
Yes.
Voting yes. Thank you. Before we move to our business agenda, Carol, can you update us about the report received in our packets regarding the FTE?
Yes, and actually there are copies on the back shelf as you came into the room. But we provided the board with an update on FTE that were allocated after the last enrollment count on September 17th, both for kindergarten support specifically, and then across grades 1 through 12, and it's broken out school by school, so you can see exactly where the FTE went. The one thing that we are still looking at are some numbers with some special ed classrooms that we're still getting some feedback on, but otherwise enrollment FTE have been allocated. So.
Yes, thank you. I really want to thank district administration for this, superintendent, also Assistant Superintendent Lopez. I know that in years past, sometimes it has been mid to late October or even early November before we've been able to have teachers in the classrooms, and I think this year it was all allocated before the end of the third week in September, which makes a tremendous difference in the school year for an awful lot of children, and that's absolutely wonderful. And I was pushing on that very hard, and thank you very much for delivering. That means a great deal. And I, as one qualifier, like Mr. LaFarve said earlier this evening, still concerns around those life skills classes.
And that's those are the ones that we're still
yeah,
looking at.
Madison, Franklin, and Wilson I've heard about explicitly, and that would be very important. Thank you.
And I think Robert Gray, to add to that, and I think that part of the issue that I was hearing about special ed life skills in particular was something around reporting dates, and maybe we need to look again at the date that they needed to report numbers, because for some reason with the transfers, they felt that they weren't, they hadn't gotten enough time to get a full handle on the numbers, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and echo the thanks on the great work. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks too. We got a fair amount. I would say the most emails that I got so far were around the concerns about having enough teachers, and we started early this year, so people were stressed out, but I really appreciated, Carol, how the staff responded, how quickly and how effectively, which is, in my mind, measured by not getting any more of those emails, and I'm sure the
good.
parents
Yeah.
are.
Good thing.
I'm sure the parents are appreciative too, so
Good.
thank you.
So, and I'm going to say thank you to Antonio Lopez, Assistant Superintendent, and the senior directors of each cluster, because they work directly with the principals on where we're experiencing the, either different enrollment than what was anticipated, or bubbles in a grade level that require different attention. So thank you for being swift on response. So, thanks.
Okay, the board will now consider the remainder of the business agenda, having already voted on resolutions 5149 and 5150. Ms. Powell, are there any changes to the business agenda?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the business agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Director Knowles moves and Director Constam seconds. The adoption of the business agenda. Ms. Powell, are there any public comments?
Yes, we have one. Kim Sortle.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Kim Sordyl, S-O-R-D-Y-L. And I was watching the board meeting from home earlier, and I think I'm going to piggyback on a theme that you spoke about, which is parents who are being rushed through on decision-making, and PPS staff favoring public relations over transparency and accountability and positive outcomes. Tonight, the board is about to approve a lot of spending on public contracts. I was able to attend a PPS purchasing and contracting meeting last week where the staff explained purchasing and contracting and the rules. And the two things that I took away from it is, number one, it doesn't appear that contractors are required to deliver on their promises. Once a contract is signed and the checks are cut, that appears to be the end of it. We owe it to our students to follow up and ensure that those promises are kept and that we're getting positive, measurable outcomes for our students. It also appears to be extremely difficult to get through the RFP process, which screens out small business owners who may have the best specialty to carry out those contracts. Yet there's almost no oversight of what we call direct negotiation contracts, where a PPS department head is able to propose a contract at any cost and it's approved without question. And it reminds me of the rubber stamping that we've talked about in the past. The Ray Leary contract, which is on the agenda tonight, is being rushed through without questions being answered. There are two major problems with it. Number one, he doesn't appear to fit the definition of independent contractor under Oregon law. And number two, it's an extremely expensive contract given the service and the subjective results. On the first issue, I asked PPS to have an employment attorney review this contract. That was rejected. Instead, a PPS administrator assured me that we are in legal compliance. I'd like to see the missing facts applied to the law. It's not enough to say we're in compliance. It's not enough to say he told me A, B, C. We need documentation and proof of legal compliance. And members of the Parent Coalition, you'll remember being told PPS was in legal compliance with instruction hours repeatedly. It's not enough. We don't trust PPS administrators anymore. Under the second concern, there are many unanswered questions. How can a contractor hire 4 employees when he doesn't even have an EIN number? Why are there $42,500 in supplies and indirect costs when the service appears to be weekly meetings with students and photos? Why is the business address of this contractor his home address and home email address? Why isn't the contractor paying PPS to use PPS property? I know our Cub Scouts groups have to pay for PPS property. He's not paying. There are no repercussions if the contractor doesn't meet his goals. Why is PPS paying for July through September when the contract has not even been approved yet? PPS is currently under investigation by the Oregon Tax Department. I've been asked by 2 other agencies to file formal complaints. I could also file a complaint with the IRS. I prefer that we use this opportunity to get things right with the public and with legal compliance. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. So I just wanted to say a few things. The board did pull this contract at the last meeting, and there has been a fair amount of discussion about some of the issues that you've raised. Some of them I think have been resolved, but I get the message that you want more documentation. I think a couple of things are happening. One is that the expectations, and I've talked to you about this and people in PPS administration, the expectations for what our contracts look like are changing. And I've done a fair amount of discussion in the community specifically about the Leary IM Academy contract. And I think the services that are being provided are good services, and we can document that there's a good return on the investment. That said, I've heard you ask for a few things, and I think that that's information that we ought to be able to provide. So I just wanted to reiterate what I heard, and let's get these questions answered. And so there's an issue about legal compliance for Mr. Leary being an independent contractor. I have asked this question. I've been assured that we're meeting those standards, but what you want to see is an itemization of how that's being met, not just an assurance, and I think that's something we can do. I have looked at the contract, and I agree that Mr. Leary is employing, I think, 4 other people. And as he has employees implementing this work, there may be specifications for the EIN number, and we need to verify that, and I think that's also something we can do. You had a question about, it's a $200,000 or so contract, and let's see if I do my math right. 20% of it is for supplies, and there is no itemization in the current contract for supplies, and I think that since Mr. Leary's done this work before, I think we ought to be able to provide that. There's a question about why he isn't paying for, why isn't he being charged for performing his work on PPS property? And, and you use the analogy of the Boy Scouts. And so we should be able to answer that. And then finally, there's been this issue or the question of the contract provides, the contract will start upon signing, which would be, I don't know, tomorrow. But it provides for remuneration of work performed in July and August. And I've talked to some of the staff about that. That apparently, and if I'm misspeaking, I'm sure I'll be corrected. Apparently, there is a challenge in the way we do contracting in the district in terms of that end of the fiscal year in June, and then the start of work. A lot of work happens in the summer in programs like this, and how do we account for those payments? I haven't got an answer to that question yet, and I think we need to provide one. I think that's an example of a perennial issue that I've heard the district staff acknowledge, and I think we have to find a solution for it. So what I wanted to say is I hear, those are the questions I hear. I think they're important questions. I don't, I also want to acknowledge, though, that there have been many other questions about this kind of contracting that have been asked. Some of them, many of them has been resolved, and there are still more issues. And so I just want to express that I feel like there's a commitment. Certainly, there's a commitment from the board, and I feel from, PPS staff to be clear about how this process works, particularly for no bid contracts, and so we're going to continue to work on it. And I appreciate your input, so thanks.
So when will I expect
Chair-
follow-up?
Go ahead.
Well, I
No.
was going to
Go
ask
ahead.
Chair Curler if if we could invite our Chief Financial Officer, Youssef Awad, to come forward and just talk generally, not specifically regarding any contract, but generally about some improvements and changes that you are putting in place in our contracting procedures.
Good evening. Some of the changes we have made, for example, contracts used to come to the board before we review them internally. And that's in terms of practicality, to get the work, to be a little bit more nimble and get the work done. One of the changes we made, we will not bring the contracts to the board before we review them in our procurement office. We are including the contracts in the packages for the board, and we'll continue to work on in terms of the term criteria and compliance, whether it's the IRS code or the Oregon Department of Labor, I believe. We have checked, by the way, all the contracts on all terms and conditions. I did not include that in the package for you, but we have gone through itemized lists, if you to call it, and we have done all that review. In terms of, I think one of the questions is, we need to have lawyers review the work. I mean, that's a choice, but if we to do something like that, that's gonna require time. It's gonna take time coordinating that effort, getting them to lawyers, in addition to that cost. And it can be a heavy cost, because I mean, imagine every specialized contract we have about 1,005 contracts that we had last year. I'm not just talking employment contracts, I'm talking all our contracts, because we can't just do it for one contract and not the other. So we're looking at a significant amount of money in spending to do that kind of review. That's not practical. I haven't seen it done anywhere else. If that's something we need to do, we just need to know that there is a cost associated with it.
Yeah, and you came to the Business and Operations Committee, and I believe
Correct.
are formulating other thoughts on how to continually improve our. so
Correct,
moving forward.
and we have it scheduled, I believe, for the next Business and Operation Committee. We will bring forward the manual for procurement that govern the policy, the procedures that we follow, and we will have opportunity to discuss it further there, and we can show more improvement there.
Yeah, appreciate that. Julie.
Oh, no, it was just a very small piece earlier that I was trying to clarify. I'm confused about the issue of, do our the personnel that we have used as contractors, do we generally ask them to pay for space?
It's different than civic use of buildings.
Yeah, so I think, because that was discussed earlier, so.
Well, it depends on the contract. I mean-
Regarding, for example, the Leary contract and why we didn't ask him to pay for the space he was
So-
using, so I'm confused.
Julie, I can answer
Okay.
that, and maybe just to help you, Youssef, because I did talk to, because the space, one example is the space is used in Franklin. And so the reason the contractor meets with the students, the clients, so to speak, in school, and so that's the most convenient space to meet with the students. So, so I think you know, that makes sense. And it's, again, I do think there, obviously, it's a distinction with the civic use of space. So I think that's
Or
the
someone we
answer.
hire, right?
Which I think shouldn't be confused, which does happen in contracting situations, shouldn't be confused with a contractor operating, you know, long-term out of a facility and using a computer and electricity. So I think it's a practical issue. So anyway, that's how I understand it. But I think, you know, we can answer those questions, but I think that's a very, you know, understandable and a good response. So that's what I learned because I asked about that. I just had one more question, quick question for Yusuf. You've appeared before the board several times since I've been on the school board, and every time, and I've seen you at functions too, every time you appear with a single lapel pin on your left lapel, but tonight you have an additional pin, and I was wondering if you could tell us what that is.
I think you probably can explain it more than I do.
Okay, well then we'll have to talk about it in private. I'm disappointed that you can't explain what that is. Okay,
I believe
thank
it's
you.
the only superhero, Hispanic
Yes,
superhero character.
right.
That's
Yes,
what it is.
Very good,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Steve?
Comments more than questions, couple comments. One, we've got about $500,000 in two contracts, one going to Education Northwest, or really great people evidently, one going to Playworks, or also really great people. But we have $500,000 going out, and my guess is we could live with, I'm planning to vote for them, because I certainly wouldn't drop this in the middle, and then, but we could probably live without what they have here. The Playworks, we have people in our own district who could put that together for practically nothing. And we also, the other one is teams to help our principals figure out how to get achievement better, assessment better. Probably if we gave them the time, they could do that themselves without the money. And so I just think that as we go to the next budget, that it'd be great if we would look for these things and see if we could do them in alternative ways that were much less expensive than these are. And then I had a question to Mr. Curler. The architects for the grant, so we've got, let's say we pay them $8 million. Now, I think I asked this question before and should remember, but with my rotten memory, I don't. If we pay them $8 million, does it come out of this? This bond, or does it come out of the next bond? That was in this bond, the $8 million?
Grant is part of the current bond.
Okay, thank you. But suppose the other bond doesn't go.
So grant,
So we've wasted $8 million?
no,
Grant is,
grant is part of this bond.
Grant was approved in
They're
2012.
Oh, I'm
part
sorry,
of
I
the
got
2012
confused on
bond.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yes, so, okay, that's the, I'm sorry, I apologize entirely. I was thinking wrong. Thank you.
It's time for a comment.
Sure.
I just want one quick comment around the discussions of the contracts tonight, particularly the Leary contract, to say that just personally, I'm really disappointed that we're focusing on a contract that helps, that's specifically to focused on our underserved and underachieving students. And I think it's really hard to quantify a dollar for dollar outcome for what we're spending on historically underserved kids. I think it's true that we can look at our policies and procedures. It's just unfortunate in my eyes that it happens to be focusing on our really needy populations. So that's all I have to say.
You know, so I will comment on that because I think it's unfortunate that we can't look at all our contracts in an equitable way. And we're asking reasonable questions about reasonable services that are being provided. And I don't think there's ever been any intent to single out any type of contract. I would say that the questions that we have, well, you're certainly entitled to your opinion, Julie, but I will tell you that the questions that I asked about the Leary contract were the same questions I asked over a month before about the Open Meadows contract, and they still remain unanswered.
Also serves underserved students
So-
and kids of color.
So
And as
I
a-
really,
yeah.
what impresses me most is that you can ask these questions months before, still not get answers, and then, basically beat up on the messenger. So I don't really appreciate that. So thank you.
All right.
As I said, I think you missed the point when I said it is important that we look at our policies and procedures, and it's high time we do that. I was expressing an opinion that I'm disappointed personally
Yeah.
that it's targeting the type of, you mentioned Open Meadows and the Leary contract, which does indeed provide services for our underperforming
Right.
and typically, historically underserved kids.
And
that was my opinion.
And I'm disappointed that you would put it in that context. I think that's irresponsible.
out.
All
So
right.
thank you.
So let's go, and I do think it is a policy, issue, and that's where we ought to be on this.
Yeah.
A lot of our
So,
contracts are for
and that's certainly where my head is. The board will now vote on the business agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? The business agenda is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Davidson voting
Yes.
yes. The next meeting of the board will be held October 20th, and this meeting is adjourned.